Well, folks. What a weekend. What a USMNT top 10 weekend. What a weekend for Americans in general, both at home and both abroad, and for some of the prospects at home. Guys, this was one of the few weeks, and I don't have these super often, where there are a lot of guys that should have been in the top 10 but didn't make it. And that's what we want, right? We want guys who show up who might normally be in a top 10. Let me give you an example. Brandon Vasquez scores a goal for Monterrey. Not an amazing goal, but a decent finish. On a normal weekend, that would probably squeeze into the top 10. This weekend, he wasn't even close to the top 10, right? He wasn't even like 11th. And that's amazing. This is what we need from all of our guys. We need competition for spots, all of, strong performances week in, week out, making, the selections very, very difficult for Greg, for, giving the fans more stuff to argue about. Who starts in midfield right now? That's a big argument. Johnny or Adams, Gio or Tillman. To me, that's a moronic argument because that's obvious. But still, Musa McKennie, it's less obvious. But De La Torre is in there. Maloney's in there. Like, there's so many options in there now, in midfield. We honestly, and then you even have that a little bit now at striker, right? Where you've got, Balogun scoring, Pepi scoring, Sargent scoring, Haji scoring. Chris Richards is back, playing center back, thankfully, in a back three for Palace, and, gets a goal. This is going to be good for his confidence. Got a clean sheet, right? Like, sure, I think right now there's some question marks about some of our center backs, but it's not as bad as people think. And then I think really the one is, and P. Fox scoring. Like, for strikers, there's a lot to talk about, 5 guys in Europe all getting on the, the score sheet regularly. That's amazing. We didn't have that not too long ago. So yeah, whether or not Greg knows how to use these guys is always the question. But in terms of a top 10, what a great week. And so not only is there going to be a top 10, there's actually a top 16 this week. Well, 7. Yeah, no, top 10. 10, top 10, and then 6 guys who were on the bench, quote unquote. So it's a good weekend, guys. A really, really good weekend. And it was hard to judge performances and judge rankings and where people should go. Elmau, you sounded Jerry Seinfeld when your voice cracked. Lance Tanwi, Pifok is good. Yeah, like, think about it, guys. A few years ago, if we had a guy scoring 10 goal contributions in the Bundesliga, he would have been a roster lock, right? And people would have been demanding for him to start. And now it's like he doesn't even really enter the conversation, right? Now, maybe he should, and you can argue that, but, Pepi, Balogun, Sargent, for me at least, are the top 3, with Haji and Pifok fighting fourth and 5th, right? Vasquez and Ferreira and Maguire and whoever else you want to push, they don't even enter the conversation for me. They're not even in USMNT. Cowell can enter as, an Olympics conversation, but other than that, they don't even enter the conversation. So anyways, my point is that we're getting a lot of really good performances, especially in the second half of the season, to the point that we're smashing records of what Americans would, have ever done in Europe, and not just smashing them, but doubling them, which is a video that'll come out in midweek that I have about this. But let us begin with our top 10. And of course, we start with Paxton Aronson. Real quick though, guys, let me just say, I put the link for the, we're going to do like a good half an hour of call-in. So the link is I've pinned the link at the top of the chat if anybody wants to call in later in the Discord. But we'll start here with Paxton Aronson from Vitesse Arnhem. Went there on loan in January from Eintracht Frankfurt. A good move. He's not quite ready for the Bundesliga, but, the Eredivisie is a good development league. Paxton Aronson played 90 minutes against Excelsior, got 1 goal, created another chance, 2 out of 3 accurate long balls, 3 out of 3 tackles won, 4 out of 9 ground duels won, and 2 out of 3 aerial duels won. What's interesting about Paxton's time here at Vitesse, is that they're actually playing him in a double pivot. He's not playing as a 10 or as a winger. They're playing him a little bit deeper, which gives him a little bit more time on the ball. And I think that's probably good for him to try and build up a rhythm and improve some of his decision-making. Long-term, I still think he's probably a 10/winger, but it's interesting how they're using him over there in the Netherlands. This is the goal that Paxton scored. It wasn't an amazing goal, but he made a good run off a cross, got to it before the keeper, and just sort of side-footed it into the, flicked it into the net with the outside of his boot. So well done, Paxton. May it be the first of many in the Eredivisie. Balogun, the subject of much malign recently because he quote-unquote was not scoring enough. I think I think a couple of things. I think it's fair to say that he's out of form. I think that's natural, and he is, there's serious questions about his penalty taking ability, and that's something we'll talk about too. But I think you have to remember Balogun this season is playing a completely different way than he played for Reims. Reims played a very strong pressing game that was, very heavily focused on transitions, which suited him. He could make those runs in behind with his speed and get isolated now at the keeper and finish. Whereas Monaco are a better team. Monaco wants to have the ball. They want to possess. They want to break teams down. They want to be very, very much the protagonists. And what that means for him is improving some aspects of his play, like his hold-up play and his combination play in tight areas. I've seen improvements this season, and you can see it's something that he has to add to his game if you want to play for a big club. Now, today's goal was a very, very nice goal, but he played 89 minutes, got one goal, missed a penalty, 5 out of 6 penalties missed. The other thing I was going to say about Balogun, though, guys, he's got 11 goal contributions this season in about, I think, just above 2,000 minutes. Not even. Let me double check. Because I don't think, if you look at his actual goal contributions compared to minutes played, I don't think it's as bad as some people try to make it sound. So let me just double check the exact minutes. But I think it was about one goal every 150 minutes or so, which is about every game and a half, or one goal contribution every game and a half, roughly, which for a striker, guys, that's really not that bad, right? It's really not that bad. So I think people look at his, 22 goal contributions last season and go, oh, this is, he's not playing quite at this. So I was wrong, guys. He actually 1,300 minutes, okay? He's played 1,300 minutes, and he's got 11 goal contributions. So you're talking about one goal contribution every game, pretty much, either a goal or assist, every 90 minutes, roughly, every 100 minutes. 120 minutes, okay? So it's still very, very good in terms of production from Folarin Balogun. And I think we need to all relax. He's 22. He's young. Today's was a really nice goal. This was the finish, but as those of you on Patreon will see, this is only the screenshot of the very end, right? The ball was played down the left into the channel. He reached it before his man, beat him, held him off while trying to be tackled. And then even as he was falling, he managed to finish this goal. Then he did also miss a penalty, guys. So I do not want Balogun anywhere near penalties for the USMNT. 5 out of 6 is an abysmal record. If we're taking penalties, I'm pulling off Balogun right before penalties, and I'm putting on probably Pepi or somebody else. Speaking of penalties, real quick, who would be your 5 penalty takers if you had to take, if we were taking penalties for a knockout game? Let's say Copa America. We're playing Colombia in the quarterfinal. It's 1-1 at the end. Who takes penalties for you? For me, my 5 would be Pulisic for sure, Gio for sure, McKennie for sure, definitely not Dest. I would take Gio, Pulisic, Pepi, McKennie, probably Johnny or Weah. Johnny or Weah would be my 5th choice, depending on who's on the field, obviously. Jedi, we have no idea how good he is at penalties because he doesn't take them for his, club. Sargent, Reem is, again, it's like, well, Reem, how do we know he's good at penalty? Like, has he ever taken a penalty in his life? I don't know. It's questionable. It's questionable. But yeah, I would go Pully, Gio, Pepi, McKennie, Johnny. That would probably be my 5. Maybe Weah. Johnny or Weah would whoever's on the field. All right. Number 8 is Brian Gutierrez, the 20-year-old winger slash midfielder for the Chicago Fire, played 88 minutes in their season opener against Philadelphia Union. Got one goal, and what a sweet goal it was. Also got an assist to help the Chicago Fire get a draw, a 2-2 draw in Philadelphia away. Not bad for a season opener. He also had 1 out of 2 successful dribbles, created 2 chances, and 3 out of 4 ground duels won. This was the goal. And again, this is just a belter of a finish from the edge of the box. But actually, again, you'll see this on Patreon. By the way, thanks to everybody who signed up this week. I really appreciate the support. He got this ball much further out, beat 2 guys on the dribble, and then unleashed an absolute golazzo against Oliver Semmel. And this was the assist. Personally, with this assist, I think, at this point, he's close enough to maybe have a crack at that. And I want him to blast that into the net. But, the layoff to, what was his name? Fabian Herbers. Laid it off to him, and then Herbers was able to finish it to help Chicago. Chicago should have won this game. 2-1 in the 81st minute. But, of course, they concede because they still have fucking Frank Klopas in charge. Don't get me started. Anyways, good for Guti. The only MLS player to make the top 10 this week. Is a double goal contribution. Jordan Pefok gets 7th, played 88 minutes for Borussia Mönchengladbach against VfL Bochum, scored 1 goal, created 3 chances, 0 out of 1 successful dribble, 1 out of 6 ground duels won, 3 out of 4 aerial duels won. This was the goal, made a good run, and headed it into the back of the net. That's his, I think, 9th or 10th goal contribution for Gladbach this season. Well, between Gladbach and Union Berlin. So good for him. Continuing to stay productive, at least to a certain degree in the Bundesliga, even if he probably doesn't really fit the way the USMNT play. I have him as my 4th choice after Sargent. So for me, it goes Balogun, Pepi, Sargent, Pefok, and then Haji. Those are my top 5 strikers. Number 6, Ricardo Pepi also scores his 10th goal of the season, playing only 18 minutes in PSV Eindhoven's 7-1 thrashing of Pek Zwolle. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Scored 1 goal, 0 out of 1 successful dribbles. Again, if we're talking about goals to minutes ratio, I am quite confident that Ricardo Pepi has the best goals to minutes ratio of all American players this season. In fact, Ricardo Pepi, with his 10 goal contributions in only 635 minutes, guys. In only 635 minutes, this guy has 10 goal contributions. That's 1 goal contribution every 63 minutes that he's on the field. Amazing. Love it. Love to see it. The finish was nothing amazing. He had to take a touch off of a Tillman flick, and then he was able to finish it. Look, it's Pek Zwolle. He's got to, I don't want to say he's got to do that against better teams because this guy did score against Sevilla, right? So, it's not like he's only beating up on the little guys. And just for the amount of time he's gotten playing as striker, he's still been incredibly productive. And again, still just 21 years old. Sergino Dest got his 6th assist of the season, played 90 minutes versus Pek Zwolle, got 1 assist, 2 chances created, 3 out of 6 successful dribbles, 2 out of 4 accurate crosses, 2 out of 4 accurate long balls, and 5 out of 9 ground duels won. Dest will not be in the Eredivisie next year. This was the cross. Great little cross over everyone's head to Bakayoko, and Bakayoko did well to finish that. That was the opener. It's got to be, really... And by the way, I want to talk a little bit about Sergino Dest, because for about 2 years, everybody was going, what is going on with Dest? Not really playing much at Barcelona. Then he went to Milan, wasn't really playing much for them. And despite that, he usually played quite well for the U.S. men's national team, right? But yet there were still detractors, people saying Dest shouldn't play for us. He's a bust. He shouldn't start. He should go to MLS. The classic overreaction to a player not playing for, a certain team. And I never really bought that. I mean, you can agree that he switches off mentally at times and that there were maturity issues there, but quality is quality. And all he had to do was get into a club and a position where he was playing regularly. And I was convinced that his quality would show. And certainly it has, right? He's really performed for PSV Eindhoven. And you can argue sometimes, yeah, maybe the quality of the opponent isn't that great. But even in the Champions League, I thought overall he's been good. Look at his performance against Dortmund on the weekend I thought very good. So the reason I bring this up is because right now it's happening to Giovanni Reyna. And by the way, was critical of Reyna, even though he only played 9 minutes this weekend. I thought in those 9 minutes, he played it a little too safe with his passing. They were 4-2 down to Aston Villa. He comes on. Sure, you're not expected to rescue the game with 9 minutes when it's, you're 2 goals down. But I thought he could have at least demonstrated in his 10 minutes to be a little braver and a little, maybe, I don't know, maybe maybe the coach said, I want you to keep tempo, dictate tempo more, not always try to play the hero ball, play that ball in behind. So, I don't know what the coach told him. Okay. But maybe that's what the coach told him. And if so, fine. But for me, I would have wanted him to really push the game a little more than he did. That being said, Giovanni Reyna is currently being slandered for not playing much at Nottingham Forest. And it was not a good move at Nottingham Forest. But Giovanni Reyna is still a quality player. He is still a top 3 player in this team, right? Whether or not he is playing for his club. Remember Pulisic last year, hardly played for Chelsea. I think had 1 goal contribution the whole season. And, people were saying, Brendan Aronson is going to be better than Christian. No, guys. Even when Pulisic played for the U.S., his quality showed. His ability showed. He shows up for the national team when he puts on that shirt, regardless of what's happening with his club. And so far, Gio has done the exact same thing. When he's played for the national team. Oh yeah, and this is my favorite one now. Malik Tillman should start over Gio. Guys, it's not close. It's not close between Malik Tillman and Gio. Malik Tillman still hasn't locked down a full-on starting role with PSV. Giovanni Reyna would be PSV's second best player, or maybe third, after Bakayoko and Luke de Jong. Okay? Malik Tillman would not see the field in Nottingham Forest either. Okay? So, Giovanni Reyna, for me, is still a starter on this team. He is a starter. He will start for us in Nations League, and I'm betting on him to show up big time because he does. Remember, when he was our man of the match against Canada in the Nations League final, he also wasn't playing much for Dortmund. Okay, keep that in mind. When he got 2 goals against Ghana and had another man of the match performance, also not playing much for Dortmund. So Gio not playing much really doesn't, it really doesn't impact so far his performances for the national team. Now, if he stops performing for the national team or he's playing like shit, great, bench his ass. You know what I mean? Fine. I don't think he should get a free pass to do whatever he wants. But so long as he keeps performing for the national team, I could give 2 shits about what's happening with his club, which is not really true because, of course, I care what's happening with his club and I want him to be playing. But at the end of the day, he shows up for the national team, and so he continues to play for the national team. He is a top 3 player on this team along with Pulisic and McKennie. And I'm backing him to have a very big, not only Nations League this March, but also Copa America in the summer. All right, but back to the top 10. Luca de la Torre. Okay. I don't know why it says versus Pek Zwolle. That's my mistake. He did not play against Pek Zwolle because he's not in the Netherlands anymore. He got his 9th goal contribution of the season against Athletic Bilbao. Nope. That was Johnny who was playing against Athletic Bilbao. He was played against Cadiz. Thank you. It was Cadiz. Okay. Played 20. He did not. Okay. I think I made a mistake on this. He did get an assist, but he played 90 minutes, not 21. Ignore those other stats. This was the assist that Luca de la Torre got. Another very good assist. It's a little confusing because usually Celta Vigo are the boys in blue, but this time they're the boys in red. It was Jakob Strand Larsen here, who you can see, who left it. And then it was Iago Aspas who finished it quite nicely, but a good, a great pass. Well, a good pass from Luca de la Torre. And what's interesting about Luca de la Torre is one of his biggest weaknesses as a player is that he was never very goal dangerous. He always was good in, moving the ball from the defensive third into the attacking third. That was always his strength. But goal dangerous was a big problem of his. And Rafa Benitez came in this season and said, I know you have the quality to be more goal dangerous. I want you to be braver. And it wasn't so much that he couldn't score or couldn't assist. It was that oftentimes he would elect to make a safe pass rather than take a chance on a shot, or that final ball. And Benitez pushed it out of him this year and said, listen, Luca, you want to keep starting for me? I'm going to need you to start adding goals and assists to your game. And I know you have the quality and the ability to do it. And he took that to heart, Luca de la Torre, and now has 9 goal contributions across all competitions for Celta Vigo. Right? To get double digits in La Liga as a midfielder is great. And I still think, he's got his weaknesses. I still think he's a little slow, particularly in transition. I still think he gets pushed off the ball a little too easy at times. And he's not a starter for me for the U.S., but certainly he should be in the roster. And his versatility, remember, this is the other thing about him. He can play the 8, he can play the 10, he can play the 6, he can play on the wing. He's a very versatile player. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in March. We'll see how much time he actually gets. But yeah, really, really good to see. Weston McKennie, tragedy and triumph, both in the same game. Played 87 minutes, got 2 assists, 6 chances created, which was a match high. 4 out of 8 accurate crosses, 5 out of 7 ground duels won, and 2 fouls drawn. Weston McKennie with 2 more assists for Juventus against Frosinone. They end up winning that game 3-2. Sadly for Weston, he was pulled out with a dislocated shoulder in the 87th minute. And we don't know how long he's going to be out for. Fingers crossed. The last time this happened, I don't know if you guys remember, they say he dislocated his shoulder and he was back in like 2 weeks. So hopefully he'll be okay for Nations League. But if he's still not back for Nations League, which I think he should be, if not, we still have Johnny, Musa, and Gio in that midfield. I'd say striker and midfielders right now are our 2 deepest positions in terms of quality, which we couldn't always say, and certainly we couldn't say it before, but we are definitely very deep in both of those positions. We are at least deep at goalkeeper in terms of quality, and then center back and wing are also areas of concern. But right now, when it comes to our strikers and our central midfielders, I have no problem. Pink Taco, correct. Weston heals incredibly fast. Weston will be back in training on Tuesday because of his superhuman healing powers. Yes, I agree with that. He's always surprised us with his healing powers. It might be all the ranch and cappuccino. No, he doesn't drink cappuccino. This was the first little assist. Great little cross here to cross to Vlahovic. Vlahovic makes a good run, finishes smartly. The second one was a little through ball to Vlahovic. Nice little intelligent, through pass. Vlahovic creates some space and curls it in with his left foot. Number 2, probably the most surprising player since January to go from the Brazilian league to La Liga and to settle in so quickly, and not only settle in, but look so good. Johnny Cardoso scores his first goal for Real Betis today against Athletic Bilbao. Played 90 minutes. What a goal it was. 3 out of 6 accurate long balls, 4 out of 5 ground duels won, 2 out of 3 aerial duels won, 1 out of 1 tackles won, and 2 fouls drawn. So Johnny Cardoso, this was the goal, one touched from outside the box. That's probably, what do you guys think? 25 yards, maybe not quite, maybe 20, 23 yards, something like that. But what a finish it was. First touch. He's absolutely coming after Tyler Adams' spot, guys. And it's going to be a discussion, and I think it is going to be a discussion that's going to be very heated. And I think it's a discussion that needs to be had, okay? I'll give you my thoughts. Make no mistake, both of them should be on the roster. Both of them are extremely useful in different ways. Both of them can play the lone 6. Jesse Marsch, I'm sorry, but the takes coming out of this guy's mouth over the last year have been nothing short of shocking. And recently he came out and said, Johnny Cardoso cannot play the lone 6. He's practically playing the lone 6 for Real Betis, okay? And And again, Jesse Marsh's philosophy is that you don't need to do balls. You don't need ball skills. You don't need technique. You don't need ability. You need to run and you need to buy into his system. Okay. And he's saying he's not dynamic enough. He is much more goal dangerous than Tyler Adams ever was. Okay. He's, got this in his locker. He got an assist, won a penalty and a goal already. And he's only been there, a month? Tyler Adams is probably more dynamic. That is correct, right? But Tyler Adams is very poor on the ball in terms of his distribution, in terms of being able to make line-breaking passes, in terms of being able to be goal dangerous. And sure, you can say, well, as a 6, I'm not that concerned with them being goal dangerous, and that's fair, but it's certainly a bonus. And you know what else is a bonus? Aerial ability. Johnny scored a lot of goals for Internacional with his head. And also when you're defending set pieces, Tyler Adams is short, right? Johnny, is a bonus, is that he's goal dangerous, but also can help defend and attack set pieces because of his height. So that's something that can certainly be useful. Now, look, it's unfair to Tyler Adams right now because he's injured and he hasn't played soccer for a year. So, he's obviously not here to vindicate himself with his performances, but let's see when Tyler Adams comes back what he looks like. Certainly having that depth is good. And even if Johnny is a starter, right, then maybe you're winning a game 1-0 and you want to see out the game, you pull off a Gio and you bring on a Tyler. So now you've got Johnny and Tyler sitting in there protecting the back line. They both belong on the roster, but in terms of playing the lone 6. But anyways, we shouldn't be playing with a lone 6, guys. And that's the problem with Jesse Marsh. We should be playing a double pivot with Gio at the 10. And that double pivot right now for me, tomorrow, okay, if all things being equal and everybody being healthy, I have a double pivot of Weston and Johnny with Gio at the 10. And then right after that, okay, the backup double pivot would be Adams and Musa with Malik at the 10. So that would be the backup trio for me. Or maybe Luca. Luca in a double pivot. I think I'd rather have Musa. But again, it's close. And you still have Maloney and Musa and then maybe like a Paxton Aronson. So we're about at least, I want to say 8 deep in midfield where I feel comfortable with any of those options on the field. Anyways, congrats to Johnny. He continues to impress, continues to, silence the doubters. Speaking of doubters, and as I said about Sergino Dest, Chris Richards recently received a lot of the same treatment where we do this weird thing where we go, if you're not playing, you must not be very good. And that is true in some cases. But when you really understand the game, when you really watch players, which I think a lot of you guys do, it's easy to go, no, this guy has quality. The reasons he's not playing right now have certain context or nuance, or the fact that they're playing at a very, very high level and just the competition is higher. But that doesn't mean they don't start for us. Chris Richards is our best defender right now, along with Tim Ream. And just because he didn't play much for Crystal Palace because Roy Hodgson, the geriatric geezer, didn't like him, that doesn't mean that his quality just went away. And so people saying, oh, CCV should start over Richards or Miles should start over. Again, you want crazy takes from Jesse Marsh. He wanted Miles Robinson starting with John Brooks. That was his starting lineup for the U.S. men's national team. And he also thought Aaron Long should have been there in January camp. So anyways, I don't want to make this about Jesse Marsh, but my point with Chris Richards is that with players like Chris Richards, Sergino Dest, Gio Reyna, Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Ricardo Pepi, Folarin Balogun, I don't get too worried about their playing situations because I know that they have quality, and sooner or later quality will find a way, and that means it'll find a spot or it'll find playing time or circumstances will change, and all of a sudden they'll show up and people will be like, amazing, and I'll be like, well, yeah, that never went away just because some circumstances around the club team they play for weren't perfect. So anyways, clean sheet against Burnley ever since. It looks now, because Oliver Glasner plays a back 3, it looks like Chris Richards is not only back in the starting lineup, which he was under Hodgson, playing either right back or at the 6, but now he's playing in the back 3 together with Margehi and Anderson. And they got a clean sheet against Burnley, scored 3 goals. The opening goal belonged to Chris Richards himself, 4 out of 4 ground duels won, 3 out of 5 aerial duels won, and also drew 2 fouls. This was the goal. Cross came in. He was unmarked, and he headed home. Congratulations to Chris Richards. A goal and a clean sheet for him in the Premier League. I think it's often overlooked, guys, that it's often overlooked that we have 3 Premier, out of our back 4, 3 of them are Premier League starters. And the other one is a starter for the best team in the Netherlands and potentially a Champions League quarterfinalist, right? And then you look at our midfield. You look at what Pulisic is doing at Milan, what, McKennie is doing at Juve. You look at, the striker competition. For us to not have very high expectations for Copa America, and when I say high expectations, I don't mean a realistic look at what this team looks like under Berhalter. I mean a look at, based on the quality that we have, the quality and the depth that we have in this team, we need to have very high expectations for Copa America. And specifically because Greg Berhalter has spent 4.5 years, almost 5 years, talking about beating the best and, we're going to, go and we're going to do this and we're going to, and then when they rehired him again this summer, US Soccer was like, we believe that Berhalter is the best. We want to go into competitions and we want to, we want to beat the big teams in major competitions. Okay, well, you believe that Greg Berhalter is the guy to do that? What happens when he doesn't do it? What happens if we get second in our group and lose to Colombia or Brazil in the quarterfinal? Now, you can make an argument, right? You can say, well, I don't think Brazil is really fair. That's true, okay? But how you play matters. For example, let's say we beat Uruguay. And we get out of our group and we face Brazil and we lose 1-1. Pulisic hits the post and we lose on penalties. I think people will say, you know what? Fair play, right? But a lot depends how we look against Panama and Bolivia, what kind of progress we see, okay? But if we get second in our group, and so we do have to face Brazil, who is first, and they beat us 3-1 or 2-0 or something like what we looked like against the Netherlands, and we don't look like we're ever really in the game, then Berhalter's got to go. And by this, if we don't beat Colombia, which I think with our home advantage, we should expect that we have a good opportunity to beat Colombia. And because Berhalter has failed to beat a single team that he wasn't supposed to beat in his entire tenure, this will have been 5 effing years of not doing the thing that he was hired to do, and it will be time to let him go. Okay? But enough. So anyways, all I wanted to say was that that's very important for Copa America. Guys, real quick, we do also have the sponsor video, which I forgot to play. So let's play that and then get your ass in the Discord. I'll open it up for some chit chat in just a second.
Fantasy Sports is back with Underdog Fantasy Sports is back with a new and improved pick'em game across all sports that makes it easy to play fantasy sports with just a few clicks. Each sport allows you to build a parlay that includes between 2 and 5 predictions about the outcomes of player projections. As you would expect, the more picks you include, the greater the potential payout. Don't go crazy with it and play responsibly, but adding a few bucks here and there to a game gives it a little more excitement and stakes. Use my promo code 11YANKS or click the link in the description to start playing, and Underdog will match whatever you put in your account up to $100. Enjoy!
All right. Thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. Let's see who's in the Discord. Let's see. I wonder if President... Right now, just me in the Discord. There's nobody in the waiting room yet, which is fine. Did you guys put the... Nobody in the waiting room. You know what it is? President, what's his name, is not here. Usually he's the one that moderates it. Do you guys need the link? Is the question. Let me put the link in the chat again here. That's the link if anybody wants to hop in. If people are not in the mood to chit chat, that's totally fine. But yeah, Great weekend, guys. Just bask in the wonder that is Americans performing well at high levels. Still nobody. No worries. Let's see. Call show. Next up. The other Presidente is not here. That's why. Just join the Discord. Thanks for sharing. No worries, Seth. To be clear, guys, I am not on the Discord very often. Like, I don't go hang out on the Discord. I mainly have it so we can do call-in shows if you guys want. Has Berhalter improved as a coach in any way besides lineup? No, I don't think so. I think he's still stubborn. I think he's arrogant. I think he does not know how to manage in-game. I don't think he's very good with big personalities like Gio. And I still think his player identification and talent ID is awful. Like, you know, I've tried to give him credit for finally getting rid of all those MLS lifers, okay? But like, as Tack has pointed out, that's the fucking bare minimum. Like, you shouldn't get credit for doing what's obvious, right? Like, you don't get credit for like, duh. You know what I mean? It's like somebody whoever coaches USA basketball, calling in LeBron James and then trying to give him credit for like, ooh, that's a great selection. No, it's not a great selection. It's a fucking obvious selection, you know? So that's one aspect of it, certainly. I don't think there's a whole lot that we can point to. Look at, you know, what happened against Trinidad and Tobago. It is shocking that we looked so nervous and scared and unable to respond against a team, you know, that should have no business beating us home or away. And Greg's complete inability to lose away from home. His, you know, the Greg apologists love to parrot winning its coach, which it's by a very thin margin, number one. Number two, he's got the worst away record of any coach in USMNT history. And three, he's got the greatest generation of American players ever. And he's screwing it up, right? But the Berhalter apologists, all they can point to is winningest record. They're the same people who look at FOTMOB scores to decide how a player played. Oh, you know what, guys? Oh, I'm so stupid. I didn't even... shit. Let me pull it up because there was a bench, and I completely skipped out on the bench. Let me bring the bench back here. Bro, how do you miss the bench? Because there were some notable performances on the bench. Okay, nobody in the Discord, which is totally fine. We'll do that next time, maybe. Also, I think when President Chip is here, then he's more likely to be able to moderate. Because right now it's just me in the Discord. Let's start here. Tough being Triple G for Copa. Tough. The man's making $1.7 million a year. I think he's doing just fine. I don't think he has it tough at all. Man is making millions of dollars every year to do a piss poor job with some of the greatest players this nation has ever had. What is your opinion on Leonard Maloney? This is a great question, Chris. I watched him play against Bayer Leverkusen last week and was pleasantly surprised. Would you consider him at center back? Yes. Yeah, I would. Certainly given some of our, center backs options, I think he's a guy who you bring because he can play center back. He's left-footed, so you can make an argument for him over maybe an Austin Trusty, or maybe not, right? Maybe you bring Ream, Richards. Let's say you bring Ream, Richards, Trusty, and CCV. So that's 4. I probably wouldn't bring Maloney because I'd be comfortable with those 4. But, I mean, you could argue if one of them is out, then you bring Maloney and you can also double up as defensive depth. Also, we don't know what Tyler Adams is going to look like this summer. He's finally back in training. We'll see if he's ready for Copa America. It's hard to argue that Tyler Adams is just going to walk back into this team as a starter. Although under Greg, he just might. Who knows? But yeah, I think that is one of his advantages. He can also play center back. He isn't very good on the ball. he's sort of like Tyler Adams in that he's mainly a combative defensive midfielder. So if you're going to play him as a center back, I don't know how much you're going to get in terms of distribution, but then, still better than Miles Robinson, in my opinion. So, all right. So here we go. Way at the end. And I wanted to make sure we cover these guys. This was the bench for the weekend. Quinn Sullivan got an assist against the Chicago Fire, and they've moved Quinn Sullivan. Quinn Sullivan is now playing. They played him as a winger before, and the way that Jim Curtin playing in a sort of 4-4-2 diamond, he actually has Quinn Sullivan as one of those shuttlers at the 8. And not only did he look good in midweek, he also looked good against the Chicago Fire and got a pretty nice assist. So let's continue to monitor his position. Owen Wolff got an assist, right? Malik Tillman got an assist with a nice flicked ball to Pepi. Gianluca Busio got an assist for Venezia. Brandon Vasquez got a goal for Monterrey. And Cade Cowell got a goal for Monterrey. We've got these 3 Mexican-Americans playing in Liga MX. Brandon Vasquez, Cade Cowell, and, of course, Alejandro Zendejas. Also, there's another guy. He's a left back. I think his name is Isaias. So we have 4 of them. But, again, it's like being good in MLS or being good in Liga MX, for me, with the talent that we have playing at high levels right now, unless you're a young, promising player like a Guti or a Quinn or Wolff, that's a little different. Those guys, can still have potential so long as they don't stay in MLS or Liga MX for too long. But if you're doing well in MLS or Liga MX, it doesn't really mean much in terms of your national team call-up. I mean, to me, if you want a national team call-up and you're playing in MLS, you better be a top 5 player in the league, because you could argue the top 15 to 20 players in the league are not American, right? So it's a great place if you're young, but then you got to get out. But this was a good bench. Not to mention, Dante Seeley scored a goal for Dallas. Eric Williamson scored a goal for Portland. There were a few other performances as well. I thought Jack McGlynn looked quite good. Jack McGlynn and Quinn Sullivan both looked very good for the Union. Brady, good shot stopping, terrible with his distribution. Guti was very, very impressive. Luna was decent in midweek, I thought, against Inter Miami. Not as good this week, but I wonder how much of that is Pablo Mastroeni's system. Esmir Baraktarevic, yes. Esmir Baraktarevic also had a really good season, a really good game against DC United, especially considering that they were playing a man down. Still young, still just 18 years old, but very technical player. Maybe not the quickest, not the most explosive player, but quite a technical player. Could be a 10 in the long run, perhaps. But keep an eye on him for sure this season. Danny Trejo had 2 assists in the Polish top flight. Are you being serious? Guys, we need to chill out on Esmir. I mean, Esmir is 18. Let's see how he continues to develop, right? Some promising stuff. There. Let's see. Discord, still nobody in the chat room. So that's fine, guys. We'll do this another time. I'll just answer super chat questions for a few minutes here. For each time we see brilliance from Pulisic, expect 3 or 4 games where he would be nowhere to be found. I'm not sure I agree with you there. Viva Insight. I think Pulisic, it can be streaky, where he'll go on 6, 7, 8 game runs where he'll have a goal contribution almost every single game, and then he'll, show up, be a little quieter. Not that he's even necessarily playing bad, but he's just not making significant goal contributions for a while. But, I mean, overall, you have to look at Pulisic. His overall season, 15 goal contributions for Milan is incredible, and he's on track, certainly, to beat his personal record of 21 goal contributions for the season, which he got for Chelsea in the 1920 season, that COVID season, if you remember. That's his record. Certainly the way, he's playing right now, and with the games that Milan have left, there's no reason why he can't beat that. This is a good question, Tim. In your opinion, why is Gio not playing? In my opinion, it's complicated. Number one, he's on loan. Okay? He's on loan. Now, when you're on loan, you have to be better than the players ahead of you in every aspect to get on the field. Because if you are similar to them, why would they play you when they have their guy that they're invested in? Right? I don't think that the Wolves coach, not Wolves coach, he was the Wolves coach, Santos, I don't think he ever really wanted him. And I say that because when they asked Nuno about Gio, they said, what is he bringing? Yeah, he's good. He can play some position, some option. It was more like, yeah, sure, it's nice to have another quality player, but he certainly didn't. He wasn't like, yeah, this guy is gonna, So there's that. He's a 10, Gio, right? He's not really a winger. And he's up against Morgan Gibbs-White, who was their player of the year last season, and in my opinion, different player to Gio, but performing well. So you're not going to bench him for Gio. The third thing, it's a relegation team in England. And relegation teams everywhere, but especially in England, they love runners, right? If you're the 10, you're still going to have to, run back and defend. And that is, for better or for worse, a weakness of Gio's, right? He's not the best defensively. And if he wants to play for a top team and start week in and week out, that is certainly something he's going to have to improve on. So I think that those are the combinations of reasons why I think Gio's not playing. Somebody asked, I did not see this game, Bimmy. Pete, did you see Caden Clark for Minnesota United FC? He looked great and made a perfect pass leading to MNUFC's second goal. I didn't see that, but that's good to hear. I'll keep an eye on him as the season goes on. How are you going to do soccer coverage this summer with Euros and Copa at the same time, as well as Olympics late summer? Last summer, subscribe before I start college. Awesome, man. So we're not really going to cover the Euros. At least I'm not planning on covering the Euros. Copa America and Olympics are going to be the priority. Maybe we'll do a live watch along here and there, maybe the Euro final or the semifinal. But this is an American soccer channel, so we're mostly covering American soccer. This summer is going to be about Copa America and Olympics. So, yeah. And they don't overlap, so for me, we'll have no problem covering them both. This is probably the biggest question mark as we go into Nations League in March, right? Is Horvath pushing Turner out for Nations League starter, or will Turner be gifted the start despite the horrid form? That's a great question, Fumar. And I don't know. I think Greg is probably going to stick with Turner. Greg has never started Horvath. Even when Stefan was the starter and Horvath was the backup, he never really gave him a start unless it was like a random friendly. With Turner, I think, if anything, Stefan now starting for Colorado, I think, if anything, Greg would be more inclined to start Zach Stefan over Ethan Horvath. Like, how much do you want to... I think the competition now is between Stefan and Turner. I'm not saying it should be. I'm saying from Greg's point of view, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say 60% he starts Turner, and 45% he starts Stefan, and 5% he starts Horvath. Just because Stefan is playing regularly now. And by the way, remember when Chris Armas was going to rescue the Colorado Rapids with his Jesse Marsh, Red Bull, energy ball, run. It's not going to work. This fraud worked his way into Leeds and Manchester United because of an old archaic system that almost nobody plays anymore in Europe. Certainly nobody at a serious level. And, I'd say, 35%. Thank you, S27. I just don't think it's going to work at Colorado, right? Just because you brought Sam Vines and Zach Stefan and Georgi Mihailovic back, but now you're playing energy ball, which honestly doesn't suit any of those guys. Georgi Mihailovic is not a runner. Sam Vines is not really a runner. He's not really a quality player either, but that's, Stefan is a guy that, you want to be he's better on the ball than a lot of our other keepers at the moment. So I don't really understand why guys like Chris Armas continue to fail upwards, and just, get more. Watch, he flops at Colorado. I'm sure there will be another job waiting for him. It takes a long time to get pushed out of the system, the American soccer system. Once you're in, and by the way, I'm going to tell you this. Tack made a tweet when Chris Armas got the job at Manchester United as an assistant coach, sort of mocking him, like, how absurd is it that this guy's going to be telling Ronaldo how to run? And a very famous American commentator, former national team player, who, has their own show, sort of, and is, definitely a prominent voice in the American soccer media landscape, emailed or tweeted, sent him a DM on Twitter, and basically saying, how can you make fun of, Chris Armas? He was one of my mentors. He's such a great guy. Maybe you should be more supportive. Are you saying you don't support Americans abroad? Like, basically trying to guilt trip Tack for taking, for poking fun at the fact that he's going to be got a job that he never deserved, and everybody knows it. And that is exactly why the American soccer media landscape is the way that it is. There's protectionism. There's like, oh, this is my guy. He's good, even though he's clearly not good. And if you say anything that doesn't, support the media hype, then you're bad. It wasn't Lawless, no. It was a very, very soft commentator who, I won't say his name because it's not my place. But yeah, people get mad if you come after one of their, and that's why Chris Armas keeps getting jobs, because he's a company man. And it's going to take a long, long time. I think this might be his last train, right? He failed at Red Bulls, right? Got fired. Failed at Toronto, right? Got fired. Failed at Manchester United and Leeds as an assistant coach. And no, it definitely wasn't Herc. Herc is not like that. And then this is probably his last chance. If he fails at Colorado, I think he might finally be out. Speaking of being out, I think Jesse Marsch, if he ever wants to coach again, I think MLS might be his only job, because he's really pissing people off these days with the absolute nonsense that he's saying. I think Jesse Marsch is waiting for Copa America. I think Jesse Marsch is holding on because he sees the way this team plays under Greg. And he goes, maybe if they flop in Copa America and Greg is out, I'll get the national team job. I'm here to tell you right now, guys, I don't think Jesse Marsch would be much of an improvement on Greg. I think the only place where he would be a clear improvement on Greg is charisma. After that, I think that Jesse is narcissistic. I think that he is stubborn in a really stupid way. I mean, and I'll just say this. I will never forget when he admitted that he knew the minute he got to Leipzig that his system wasn't going to work. He said, I got there. I saw the way things had changed at Leipzig under Julian Nagelsmann, who actually turned them into more of a possession-based team and not a run-and-gun team. And he said, and I knew it wasn't going to work. And yet, he went and did it anyway, right? Jesse Marsch has a history of being unable to adapt or change the players that he has. And then he did the same thing at Leeds, right? Everything that happened at Leeds is not all his fault. But he refused to change and he refused to adapt. And then he got fired. And, Jesse is going to have to take a good look in the mirror. He, turned down opportunities at Leicester and Southampton because they didn't want him for the long term, because he's not a good coach in the long term. And then now he started this podcast on CBS Sports Galazzo, and almost everything he says, I'm just going to give you a review of some of the things that he says that make me really question his intelligence and his ability to be a good, USMNT coach. Number one, our starting center back pair should be John Brooks and Miles Robinson. Absurd. Giovanni Reyna should be a situational player. Absurd. Tyler Adams is a top 100. The only American player to be a top 100 player in the world is Tyler Adams, and only when he was playing for me. Narcissist. Aaron Long should have been in January camp. Absurd. Didn't know Yunus Musa's name. Absurd if you want to be the national team coach. Johnny Cardoso can't play as a lone six. Not dynamic enough. Absurd. And then recently calling out, players for training port. You don't fucking do that, guys. Like, you don't talk about a player's training habits in public. Certainly not somebody who's still a pro, right? It's one thing if it's a retired player. It's, oh, this guy trained terribly. But to say he was terrible in training, That's just something that you don't do. You don't throw your players under the bus, even if they're ex-players. And it's just every time he opens his mouth, I lose more respect for Jesse Marsch. And I really question whether or not he would be an upgrade on Greg. And I think he might be, but only marginally. I also think the problem with Jesse is he's going to turn us into run and gun. And he's going to try to turn Pulisic and Gio into pressing merchants. I don't think that's going to work. They're not pressing merchants, right? I think Aronson and Adams will be his two most valuable players. Like, they will always start in every team that he has because they do what he wants. It's just, you can't, I can't fathom a U.S. men's national team making progress under him either. So, anyways, it is what it is. Hopefully, Jesse never becomes the guy. You know, there was rumors about Matarazzo getting sacked, right? And how maybe he would be the guy come in the summer. But they just beat Dortmund today. Dortmund under Terzic, the moron himself, continues to look worse and worse and worse. And I don't think Terzic is going to be there. I think if they lose this game to PSV in the Champions League, I think Terzic is done. I think the only thing that has rescued his job so far is that he's still in the Champions League. But there's a good chance he doesn't even make top 4 anymore, the way that they're playing. So, but this was about Matarazzo. He just got that win against Dortmund. He's still 8th in the Bundesliga. I don't really know why he's under pressure, to be honest. I don't. I think that Matarazzo is doing a great job at Hoffenheim, just like he did at Stuttgart before that. And we'll see what happens this summer. But I'm telling you guys, if Greg gets fired, and this is the problem, if Greg gets fired, I am 99% sure his replacement is going to be Jesse Marsch, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think that Jesse Marsch will be just as bad as Greg Berhalter, but in a different way. So anyways, I'm going to sign off here, guys. Thanks for hanging. 2 super chats to read. Pete, we're all going to miss heavy metal football next year. What do you mean, Jeff? There's no heavy metal football being played right now. Imagine if a new manager called Gio from loan. I don't know if they can recall him from loan because I think they paid $1 million as sort of a loan fee. So I don't think they actually can. I don't know the terms of the loan. Maybe there's a clause in there, but it would have to require like a lot of injuries. Sometimes they do that if we can recall the player if we have a certain amount of injuries, but also, it is, you would have to give back the $1 million loan fee that they paid for Gio. So I don't think he's going to go back to Dortmund. I think Gio is going to have to go back to Dortmund in the summer, hopefully with a new boss, get his head down, continue to work hard, and try to impress the new guy. And I think maybe this is a little bit good for him, this Nottingham Forest loan, because, sure, there are circumstances why he's not playing, but I think there's more he can do in order to get playing time. And I'm saying this as somebody who's been a staunch defender of Gio for years, for 5 years now. So, but that's just my opinion. Guys, thank you for hanging. Appreciate all the super chats. All of these videos of all these goals will be broken down, including the bench videos, on Patreon tomorrow. Thank you to everybody who subscribed to Patreon. Thanks to Underdog for sponsoring this stream. You guys have a great rest of your Sunday. Oh, MLS is on. Red Bull is playing. Fun. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Have a great one.